Hello, everyone. It is January 7th, 2025. Let's go around the Big Ten. Chip, big week coming up for the Big Ten, represented in both college football playoff semifinals. We'll get to that in a minute. We got to get to the important stuff first. The Duke's Mayo Bowl. We've asked for it for weeks. We got it. We got PJ Fleck winning the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Minnesota, kind of maybe a slow start, but then really put it to Virginia Tech to cap off the Big Ten bowl season, which I thought was a pretty successful bowl season, and even more so when you include the playoff games and what the Big Ten's done in the playoffs so far. But these are the types of wins that I do think when you're a program like Minnesota, like it's just so much easier to go into a living room or to make a photo or on campus visit, whatever, just when you're talking to recruits, it's just a lot easier to make those pitches and to have these conversations when you're coming off a bowl win, when you've beaten another Power 4 program. And again, let's face it, we've said this earlier about other programs who either did or didn't get themselves in these situations. Just doesn't 8-5 just feel so much better than 7-6? Doesn't it? It's only one game. It just feels a lot better.
I agree with you. And for what it's worth, and this is just one person's opinion. I think, like the Duke's Mayo Bowl for, let's just say the absurdity of it all. Like it's not as, it doesn't have nearly the amount of hype and interest like the Pop-Tarts Bowl does, but it has the interest. I mean, I will share that with you and our viewers that my wife and I, we were out for pizza and beer on Friday night, and my wife is very much into like Ohio State football, but like all the other bowl games, it's kind of like whatever. So when I explained, hey, the winning coach gets doused with mayonnaise, my wife was like, somebody would actually volunteer to, and I said, no, like this is like, it's like a big deal. And when I sent the like before and after pictures of PJ Fleck with the mayo, my wife was like trying, not that she was going to become ill, but she thought just the mere thought of it was just, too difficult to comprehend. So my point being, congratulations to Minnesota. Congratulations to PJ Fleck. I know there are a lot of people out there that are not really high on PJ Fleck. I will simply say, and again, this kind of sounds like angry man, get off my yard. I always thought going back 20 some years ago, even though he would have certainly have been retired by now, I always thought it was a huge mistake for Minnesota to fire Glenn Mason. They recovered nicely for a brief period of time. But I think with PJ Fleck, I think that he fits the mold of like, okay, Minnesota is a developmental program. And I completely agree with you, Marc. I think 8 wins, bowl win, getting doused with a big vat of mayonnaise. I mean, it is kind of a shtick for recruiting, but it certainly works for PJ Fleck.
I think PJ's really good. Now, I fully understand, like, he's not everyone's cup of tea. Mm-hmm. You're going to get a lot of rhetoric. You're going to get a lot of hyperactivity for lack of
exactly.
I mean, he is like, I don't think there's an off switch there. And that doesn't always sit well with everybody, but I think he's really good. He's a really good coach. I think he's done a great job at Minnesota. I think he's made them consistently competitive. That is not an easy job.
No.
You have to go a long way for a good percentage of your talent. There aren't a whole lot of Coy parishes around.
Right. Exactly.
You have to go find these guys, whether it's the portal, whether it's, just advanced scouting and doing a better job of identifying players at the high school level. So I followed his career for a long time, known various people who've worked on his staffs. And again, I think he's really good. Would it work? I think the question everyone always asks, like, would it work at like Michigan? Would it work at, Ohio State? I don't know. There's parts of him that aren't all that different than like Urban Meyer. Like they're like, he's a lunatic. And I mean that like in a good way, but like Urban Meyer's a lunatic too.
Exactly.
And like, I think it manifests itself in a little bit different ways, but they're both very just like, always on type of thing. And so I don't know, but I think he's great for Minnesota. And I think they're a program you always have to prepare for when you play them. You can't, like this year you could play Purdue and be like, okay, we bring our C game, we're going to beat Purdue. You have got to prepare well for Minnesota. They will scare the life out of you if you don't. So they're a very competitive program. And again, I think he's one of the better coaches in the conference. I really do.
Yeah, I think he definitely. I agree wholeheartedly with what you said about it's not an easy place to win. I mean, as we're recording this, I mean, like the part of the country that you and I are in, I mean, it's freezing cold. Well, like without even looking at it, I know that Minnesota gets colder. I've been there in the wintertime, and that's not an easy sell. I mean, like even like the fact that you could be from the Midwest, just the mere thought of, this kind of an freezing cold environment, it's very, very difficult. The fact that he's been able to, like you said, the koi parrot, like that doesn't grow on trees, but keep those guys. Ohio State this better than anyone. Ohio State really wanted him. We're able to keep him. By the same token, get other guys from the Midwest that other Midwest programs want. And oh, by the way, I'm going to dip into the transfer portal and be able to woo and lure people from the transfer portal to come to Minnesota to contribute to a winning program. So yeah, he's not everyone's cup of tea. But I just think that, he definitely has Minnesota always in bowl game contention. They're always in the thick of it. It's not an easy game. I think Michigan, let's face it. I mean, they got some questionable officiating calls that kind of went their way. So maybe Minnesota would have pulled it out. I don't know, but Minnesota gave Michigan all they could handle. So the fact that they went 8-5 and they're going into 2025 with a lot of positive momentum is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, like here's their losses: North Carolina by 2 at the beginning of the year,
and by missed field goals.
Yeah,
let's not forget that too.
Totally blew that. Yeah, should have won that game. Okay, you lose at home to Iowa by 17. That's ugly.
Yep.
You lose on the road to Michigan by a field goal, and again, they had some things go against them there. Lose at Rutgers by a touchdown, not a terrible loss, and then you lose at home to Penn State by a point in a game you really just about had. They were an eyelash away from being a 9 or 10 win team this year.
There you go. Okay, so if you're talking 10-win team, now you're in the college football playoff conversation. I'm not saying that they would have, but you're in the conversation. So I completely agree with where we started with that like that 8 looks so much better, but it's like when you go under the microscope, so to speak, and kind of look at it closer, they're not an easy win. Yeah, they're very close.
They're close. And, look, if they were in the SEC, we'd be talking about how they should have been in the playoff. Like South Carolina and Ole Miss and every other team in the SEC that didn't, completely go, under 500 this year. So, one more win and we could have been campaigning for them to make the playoffs over.
There you go. Programs. Exactly.
But yeah, so again, I just think that's a program that's doing the right things, going the right way, and will continue to be competitive under PJ Fleck. So nice win there for Minnesota. And again, with the bowl games, obviously they're losing kind of some steam with the expanded playoff and, how much, the viewership and the sponsorships are there. The Duke's Mayo Bowl and like the Pop-Tarts Bowl, is it gimmicky? Of course it's gimmicky, but these are exhibition games and they really always have been. They really always have been, but they're even more so now. And I think bowl games like that have the right idea. Because like you said with your wife, you're out for pizza and beer and she's now interested. I had the same experience in the living room couch. Same scenario. Got a nice drink poured. We ordered some pizza. We were watching the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And my fiance was going to go, I don't know, whatever women do on the weekends when they like can't sit still, like go rearrange something or, move the furniture around or organize or whatever she was going to go do. And I'm like, hey, do you really want to do that right now? That, the Pop-Tart Bowl's coming on, and they're going to toast a huge Pop-Tart at the end. She's like, no, they're not. I'm like, no, they got an edible mascot at the end. No, they don't. And sure enough, I said, just watch. And she sat down, and Pop-Tarts are running around, and they're talking about it on the broadcast. And eventually she does sneak off, but she goes, tell me when they come back and they're going to do the Pop-Tart thing. So I think I had to like text her. She's upstairs. And I'd come down, like the Pop-Tart's about to get toasted. And that is one person that would have never watched that game.
Yeah. See, that's exactly it. Like you said, it's like now you've cultivated not a high level of interest, but you cultivated like some curiosity, and it's like,
and here's the thing, like from a viewership perspective, like as long as the TV's on, like it doesn't really much matter for them. Like if the TV's on, that's a view, whether like you're locked in intently or it's background noise and you look up every few minutes to see what's going on, you're still getting the view from a ratings perspective, in terms of trying to sell that to broadcasting partners and advertisers and everything else. So it's a sideshow, but I think those types of bowls I think that's what we have to move forward towards, is like these types of, every bowl game should be thinking of some type of little gimmick to do.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, like now one thing that, and again, just one person's opinion, the dousing of the mayonnaise of the winning coach, I think that's a fun gimmick. The idea that, okay, like the commentators decided to put an ice cream bar in mayonnaise and try it. Like, yeah, like okay, guys, like I know that you're trying to promote the mayo and everything, but it's like I think that was like a little too much devotion to the the program.
Just dip a Frito or something.
Something
that's like at least like relatively like makes sense. But yeah, but here's what's going to happen now next year. I can promise you this is going to happen for both of us. My fiance is going to ask, hey, when's that Pop-Tarts game? When I'm watching like the earlier bowl game, like the first series of bowl games, I'm going to get asked about the Pop-Tarts bowl. And you're going to be sitting around watching the whatever bowl.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the bowl week, the very first bowl week. And your wife's going to be like, hey, when's that mayo thing happening? When's the mayo happening? And so you get interest from people that you would normally not get interest from. So I think that's the path moving forward, is to have these bowl games just like generate some type of cool gimmick, preferably with a sponsor, and do stuff like that. I think that's the path forward to sustainability for these bowl games.
I agree with you.
Quick transfer note: Marc Gronowski, quarterback, South Dakota State. South Dakota State. I'm sorry, South Dakota State. That could be very important to people in that part of the country. I know there's the Dakotas and the Montanas have their big FCS rivalries. Okay. South Dakota State quarterback Marc Gronowski to Iowa. Gronowski, great year at South Dakota State. Actually one of the bigger, more well thought of quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Iowa's kind of an interesting destination. Iowa's quarterback situation has been not great, to be kind. But Marc Gronowski, 10,330 yards passing and 1,767 rushing with the Jackrabbits, 2 national titles, and a Walter Payton Award in 2023, and a finalist for it again this year. That is the FCS equivalent of the Heisman. 49 wins as a starter. Wow.
Very impressive. Very impressive.
Okay, yes. How's this going to translate? That's pretty good at a level of football. It's pretty good. Like, this could be, is this a something or a nothing for Iowa?
Well, I think it's definitely a something. I mean, I will freely admit, I think teams that rely too much upon the transfer portal, I mean, we've seen it in years past, like the most glaring example that you and I have talked about previously, like with Michigan State years ago, like all of a sudden like the bottom fell out and there was no depth to that, program. But with Iowa, I think they fall under that category of kind of almost the way that Ohio State seems to, like more of like a supplementary thing. And I'd be the last person to be casting judgment upon a program for bringing in a quarterback, considering how Ohio State has benefited, not just this year with Will Howard, but, let's face it, like Justin Fields is, like the same kind of a thing. That, with Iowa, it's going to be interesting to see the marriage of a talent like Gronowski with the offensive coordinator leadership, Tim Lester. Like, okay, what is it that Gronowski can do well, and what is it that we like to do well, and where can we find common ground to meld success? And hopefully that will be enough to propel Iowa into the upper tier of the Big Ten for 2025.
Yeah, this is one of the more interesting moves, I think, in the Big Ten portal so far. I think the thing I like about this, I can't sit here and say I've watched Marc Gronowski play like a dozen times or anything like that.
Right.
I did watch the FCS championship last night. That was awesome. But one thing I know about him is he is mobile, as evidenced by nearly 2,000 yards rushing during his career. And I think that's the way Iowa's got to go. Obviously, he can throw the ball. He threw for 10,000 yards. But I think having a statue back there on top of being this power-heavy, like you got to – I think for Iowa to get back to being like a more relevant, competitive offensive football team, they've got to have a little more juice from the quarterback position in terms of the ability to run. And so this is an interesting marriage to me. In that case, you can run a lot of play action with him, bootlegs, things like that, get him on the perimeter. And again, I think you can tuck it and run. This looks really good on paper for them. I'll be very interested to see how it plays out. You never know. It could be boom or bust, moving up a level like FCS to a Power 4, to a league like the Big Ten. You never quite know how that's going to work, but this feels like the juice is going to be worth the squeeze for Iowa on this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that when it comes to Iowa, because they're never going to be, implementing the spread, as long as Kirk Ferentz is there, like I respect the philosophy, if not the end result, like the idea that, okay, we're going to be, more of a pro style offense, and we're going to have, obviously really good, we're going to emphasize on strong running game with the offensive line, and utilize the tight end. But I think, like you said, having a mobile quarterback that will allow you for better execution of a play action passing attack, that tight ends are always going to be, like an integral part of that offense. Being able to, get a quarterback like Gronowski out on the perimeter on, like you said, like on like possible waggle plays and things like that. Even if when he's rolling out that, okay, nothing is open downfield for him to gain, I'm just going to say like 3-5 yards, help keep drives alive, keep the clock running. I think that just helps the Iowa offense from being as stagnant as we've seen over the last several seasons.
Yeah, 1,000%. Like, look, they're not going to attract 5-star quarterbacks at this point. They're just not until they have a better proof of concept. It's just not going to be like a 5-star quarterback at a high school destination. So you really have to have a guy who can use his legs, in my opinion. Like I can't emphasize that enough with what Iowa wants to do offensively. When you have a guy back there who's just not mobile, it's just so easy to load the box and run blitz. It's just so easy to defend. When you give them the threat of play action or the threat of going around the end with the football from the quarterback position, I think that's huge for them. So we'll see. Again, we'll see how this marriage works, but on paper, it looks good to me. All right, let's get to the semifinals.
All right.
Are we going to have a Big Ten national championship game, Chip?
You're pinning me down. I'm gonna say yes. My rationale here is obviously, I mean, like our staff predictions article will be coming out later. So, spoiler alert. Yeah, I'm predicting Ohio State to win. But getting back to the premise of your question, I'm going to go with Penn State, but this is going to be, I mean, I think this is going to be a knockdown, drag out battle, like all the way to the end. Like, it's not going to surprise me if this is one, last play of the game, field goal, some type of, like either like a field goal to win it, field goal from Notre Dame, in this case, missing it. So like, I really do think, because it's almost as though like you're basically looking at two mirror images of of what both teams like to do. They both like to run the ball. They're both sound defensively. They both use the tight end, now in Penn State's case even more so than Notre Dame. But that's kind of why I look at it like, all right, it's going to be, I'm not looking for anything high scoring, but I am looking for something that's going to come down to the wire.
Dang, I thought we might disagree on Penn State Notre Dame. I really thought we might disagree on Penn State Notre Dame, and you were going to come in and be like, no, Notre Dame's going to beat Penn State. I have Penn State beating Notre Dame as well in a very close game. I'm going to say a very similar thing to what I said with Notre Dame Georgia, which, to remind everyone, in case you missed it, we both picked Notre Dame to beat Georgia. But I'm going to kind of play that game of like 1st to 20 is going to win this game for me.
That sounds right.
Like if you can get to 20-21, like 21-17, 20-17, I think that's kind of what we're looking at. Maybe even 23-20 maybe. But I think that's about the range we're talking about here. And I went back and forth on this the last couple of days. I spent way too much time thinking about what my pick in this game was going to be. Like, it was going to like mean something significant to my life if I'm wrong. But I think what it comes down to for me is two things. One, I do think Penn State has more overall talent from top to bottom throughout their lineup. Notre Dame does have some injury issues they've dealt with this year. It's not an excuse. Like, they are what they are at this point. They've been playing without these guys almost all year in many of these cases. But I just think Penn State's got a little bit more talent top to bottom. I think Penn State's got a little bit more of a difference maker at quarterback in Drew Aller versus Riley Leonard. Notre Dame was able to win that game last week. Did Leonard have 100 yards passing? I think it was just under. He's like 100 yards passing for the game. Right. I don't think that's going to beat Penn State. And I don't think I think Aller is more likely to replicate what he did against Boise than Leonard is to kind of elevate his play significantly above like what we saw against Georgia. But here's where some doubt was cast for me in terms of picking this game. And again, I am picking Penn State, but I almost tried to talk myself out of it. And the reason is, and I said this before about Notre Dame, we talked about this last week. I think Notre Dame, more than maybe any team in the country, knows who they are. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to veer off course. Penn State can veer off course.
Yes.
We saw it against Boise. They kind of forgot that they were running the ball for 9 yards a pop there for a while. I think Penn State's more likely to shoot itself in the foot with dumb penalties. So I think there's a larger variance in terms of the type of performance we could get from Penn State.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think I like the way you put that in terms of Notre Dame knowing who they are, probably best. And when it comes to Penn State, yeah, it seemed like against Boise State, especially, that they really overcomplicated things unnecessarily. I mean, because that game, I felt that Penn State was in control, but they were putting themselves in harm's way with, again, unnecessarily, in the second half and keeping Boise State around longer. Now, granted, I mean, the fact that they won the game down the stretch, convincingly, that was all fine and good. But to your point, I think with Notre Dame, they're not going to get bored with, what they do offensively. And Riley Leonard, the fact that, all right, he is a vital part of that rushing attack. I mean, he is going to the design quarterback runs. With Drew Aller, I see some kind of, I'm not sure if it's just innate within him, if it's something where he kind of almost like chafing to prove some. I don't know what it is, but it like sometimes like some of the passes that he throws, and then he, kind of gets frustrated and he's looking at the officials for a call that isn't coming. And that's where I think Penn State, they're going to have to just really emphasize to Drew Aller, we're going to run the ball. The opportunities for like play action are going to be there. Don't get impatient. Take what is there. So, like I said, I think it's going to be a close one, but as long as Penn State decides, hey, we're going to run the ball and not force the issue, I think Penn State can win this game, but it should be a good one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game. And again, I think this is going to be, and this is where I wavered a little bit on my Penn State pick of like, oh, do I really want to go with this? But it's going to be an exercise in patience. And I do trust Notre Dame to stay more patient.
Yeah, I would too.
Because it's going to be one of those games where it may feel like for a quarter or two that you're just banging your head into the wall. And I do trust Notre Dame to kind of stay the course more in that type of situation. But again, I think Penn State's more dynamic. I think they're more dynamic at most positions, offensively and defensively. I do think they have a quarterback advantage. Now, I also think Riley Leonard's a little more even keel than Drew Aller. So again, you may, Well, I talked about the variance. The ceiling is not nearly as high for me with Riley Leonard, but the floor might be higher in terms of what you could get in a game like this. I have no reason to think Abdul Carter's not going to play. That would make me pause a little bit. It sounds like he's going to be good to go. But look, I've called this Penn State team underrated all year. I'm not going to back down from that now that they've kind of validated me and made the semifinals. Again, I think talent's going to win out. A little bit more dynamic quarterback. We'll see. It'll be. I think 3 points either way probably decides this game. I think. Like I don't even say like usually I'll say like a touchdown. Like I think 3. I think this may not get outside of 3 points.
Right. Even the odds makers I think are kind of in our line of thinking. Like the fact that it's like a
I think it's 1.5 right now.
Yeah, 1.5. So that means
2.5, and then it moved back up to 1.5.
Right. So that means basically this. It's like, okay, like it can go either way, flip a coin. And I think I realize I sound like a broken record here. As long as Penn State doesn't force the issue because I will gladly acknowledge like Tyler Warren is a tremendous football player, but I think sometimes, okay, there's a difference between we're going to put him under center and okay, we're going to kind of what we saw against Boise State. We're going to pitch the ball back to Drew Aller and then they're going to try and throw it down the field. It's like, no. Just, all right. If you're going to have Tyler Warren under center, like maybe for like short yardage plays, something, like no need to get overly cute. Just, be consistent and don't try to deviate too much from what has worked, what has got you to this point, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think, you alluded to it earlier. I think the team who they're almost certainly going to be field goal attempts in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the kickers are going to be big. For Penn State, I look at like someone like Amari Evans. They're kind of an outside receiver. He's like their deep threat at receiver. Can he make an explosive play or two? And then for Notre Dame, can Jeremiah Love make an explosive play or two at tailback because he's a guy who can hit some home runs. Someone's going to hit one in this game. Whether it's a long run or a long pass, I don't know. But someone's going to hit a home run in this game. Who's it going to be? And then which kicker is going to screw it up? Those are two things I think are also kind of keys here. But again, I expect a great game Thursday night. I will be glued to it.
Yep.
And again, I think we're going to get a really good start to the semis.
It's no Duke's Mayo Bowl, but I think we'll somehow find a way to tune in.
Yes. So Orange Bowl, 7:30, I think.
Yeah, you got it.
Thursday night
on ESPN. You got it.
ESPN. And then Friday, Ohio State, Texas. They should be called. It's the Cotton Bowl, but it should be called like the Brand Bowl or something like that. Just like the two like biggest brands you could ever imagine.
Right.
The ESPN's got to be just, and they even get their SEC darling in there too now. So like this is like a dream for them. I think it's super cool on a couple levels. One,
Yes.
At the very end of August. So they're going to see each other in 8 months at the beginning of the year, probably with both different quarterbacks. But like, this is going to not just be a great game and a big high stakes game. They're going to see each other again in 8 months in a game that will very likely have college playoff implications next year, if for nothing else than like rankings and seedings for the playoffs. So this is like the start of a nice little 3 year thing, because they're going to have a home. It's a home and home. So they're going to play in Columbus in August, and they're going to play in Austin in 26. So we're going to see plenty of Ohio State and Texas. So I like that there's going to be a little bad blood for that home and home. So that's going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I find kind of humorous is, and I understand like the national media narrative of, okay, well, Ohio State, like the performance, because it is praiseworthy. You know, the fact that Ohio State in their first 2 playoff games, especially, you know, like how disastrously they played against Michigan at the end of November, for them to all of a sudden be like, okay, like Ohio State like is now this juggernaut, and how is Texas going to, you know, how are they going to manage this? And, you know, Steve Sarkisian trying to say like, hey, like we know what we're going up against, this great team. And then the Texas media trying to get Ohio State players to give bulletin board material. And I will say this much from my perspective, and obviously I'm biased, I think the Ohio State players are just basically too smart to try and do any kind of bulletin board material. I think they're locked in. I think they're focused. Like I said earlier, I think it's going to be a great game. I will say that the fact that Ohio State defeated Oregon as convincingly as they did was a tremendous surprise to me. That, you know, if anything, I think it would be easy to look at Texas, their struggles against Arizona State, and be like, oh, Ohio State should have no problem. No, this is a really talented team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Ohio State's offensive line has been playing well considering the reconfiguration of it, but they're going to have their hands full. So this should be another great game, for a 7:30 kickoff on Friday night.
Yeah, Texas has a great front seven. I think that's going to be the key to the game, is Texas's front seven against Ohio State's offensive line. I think that's going to determine the game. I don't know how to take like the circus around this. Like, I think Ohio State's challenge right now is to ignore what's going on in the media right now. I think they did a great job of channeling all the negativity and the naysayers and people writing them off and whatever you want to say there. And they've kind of locked in and just really beat the life out of the last 2 teams they played. Can they continue to do that? One, just from a performance perspective, can you play a third game in a row against a top, 10 caliber team like that? I mean, we're in like new territory right now. Like no one's had to do that.
Right.
In this short of a time span. So can they, just from a performance perspective, can they continue to do that? But from like a between the ears perspective, the narrative has flipped. Like, it's crazy. Like you said it, but like the same people who were firing Ryan Day into the sun, tear it all down. Ohio State's going to get smoked by Tennessee. They don't even want to, they don't even know if they want to be there. The whole program's falling apart. Have no shame now. Well, they're not going to lose. Like, how's anyone going to beat this team? They're by far the favorite. They're incredible. This is the best team. How do you like block that out and just kind of like, hey, remember when they said that we couldn't do this? Like, you have to stay in that mindset. And just watching like Will Howard and some of these other veterans on this team, I think they've done that. Now, we won't know until Friday, obviously, but like I don't see any red flags for them in terms of they're letting all this go to their heads. They seem very grounded right now, so that's a big thing. Sark's comments are weird this week. Like, maybe I should go full disclosure here. So I'm not really a Sark guy. I'm not going to get into that whole thing about why, but he's not my cup of tea. I mean, we said that with PJ Flex, not everyone's cup of tea. Sark's not my cup of tea. So I'll disclose that first, and then maybe my criticisms are coming from a place of bias or whatever. But doesn't it feel over the top, like what he's saying in the media? Like, to me, there's a line between not wanting to give bulletin board material, wanting to give the respectful answer for your opponent, and just having genuine respect for your opponent. This almost seems like it's almost condescending. Oh, yeah. They're the best team in the country. It's like, dude, I don't even think you believe that.
Right.
We're going to have to, we're just going to have to be like, it's almost condescending to me. Do I just not like Sark, and that's why I'm feeling that? Or is there something to that?
No, I think you're entitled to, your perceptions of Sark. You're allowed to have those. I genuinely think it is over the top, because to try to portray Texas as being like this, like we came from out of nowhere and now we're facing this,
small market, big market. Yeah,
it's like let's not forget
versus the Yankees.
Like, right. Let's not forget that Texas was ranked number 1 earlier in the year before one of their they lost to Georgia, and Texas, is better than anybody. I mean, like in terms of like the talent at their disposal, the recruiting that they do, the fact that, I mean, like you said, it's like Ohio State and Texas are arguably the 2 biggest programs, within the country. So it just seems like it's over the top. Like Lou Holtz used to do that all the time. Like, and after a while, everyone would be like, come on, like, what are you doing here?
Yeah. I fully understand wanting to be respectful and to not like fuel fires and things like and to motivate your team at some level, but I don't know. I feel like the Nick Saban way of doing it was just much better. Like Saban would just come out and be like, if we don't play well, they're going to beat our ass or something, something like that. Like that was always good to me. It was honest. There was no like real motive. It was an honest take to me of like kind of how he felt, how he coached his team. This just feels like, oh, little old Texas. Oh, Ohio State's so good. I'm like, you don't believe that.
Right.
I know you don't believe that. I watch you. I watch your mannerisms. I watch the way you carry yourself, the way you talk to recruits you don't believe that. You don't believe that for a second. It's manufactured. It's quite frankly, I think what it is for me is I think he's fake, and this feels fake.
Okay. I can understand
that. It's like reaffirming why I don't really like him.
That's
kind of what it's doing. And it's like, that's my thing with it. But like, you have the better quarterback in this matchup. Certainly the better prospect in this matchup at quarterback. I mean, we can argue who fits this, obviously Will Howard's done a great job for Ohio State, but you ask, the top 10 college football coaches in the country, well, you can have Quinn Ewers or Will Howard. Almost everyone's taking Quinn Ewers.
Right.
You have the Butkus Award winner. You have one of the best freshmen in the country in Colin Simmons. You've got studs up front. Like Isaiah Bond at receiver. Like Kelvin Banks might be the first tackle drafted in the draft in April. Like, you are not the Marlins. Come on.
No.
Like, this is it's just like it's almost insulting. Like, it's almost insulting everyone's intelligence, in my opinion. It's too much. It's too much. Just say Ohio State's a great team and you're gonna have to play well if you want to win. Just say that. But like, to sit there and be like, they're the best team and we're just gonna be lucky to share the field with them, and gosh, we better, I hope we play well, or they're no one's buying that from him, right? It's like no one thinks he actually feels that way, right?
Oh, no, you're completely right. I completely agree with you. And to the earlier point that you raised about Ohio State, the focus, from my perspective, I think one of the things that I've kind of picked up on in just some of the comments that I've heard Ryan Day, either, just in terms of like press conference clippings or videos that I've seen, or things that I've read. And I think this is probably a smart way, is kind of emphasizing, as cliche as it sounds, like the whole idea of the brotherhood, with the idea that this is another opportunity for you guys who genuinely care about each other. I mean, like it again, I prefaced my comments in the fact that it sounds cliche, but like, all right, yeah, we had a disappointing loss at Oregon, and we had a very traumatic, painful loss at home to Michigan. And I said it on a previous show. I stand by it. It's like I can only imagine the things that were said in that intense meeting between the players and coaches. But I think that if anything, it's like, okay, everybody is fully on board, which I think has been evidenced by the sheer domination of their first two playoff opponents. And so getting back to my point, that I think Ryan Day is, okay, we're going up against probably the best opponent that we've had so far in the playoffs. And this is an opportunity for you guys who truly love and care about each other. We take care of business. It means one more opportunity to play together, and this time it'll be for the national championship. So I think that might be, maybe I'm mistaken, but I think that's kind of like behind the scenes, is like, guys, we win this game, we get to keep playing as a family and as a team, which is what we all care about.
No, that's the mindset for sure. Will they execute at the same level? Will the coaches, so here's another thing. Like, if Texas makes this a game early, like if Texas either takes an early lead, or, it's tied in the middle of the second quarter, like Ohio State's won the last two games, like first round knockout. These games were over.
Yes.
Even before the score got out of hand, you could just watch and be like, oh, this game's over. Like at 7-0 and 14-0 against Oregon and Tennessee, you're like, oh, this game's over. Oregon and Tennessee are about to get run over. They may not even realize it yet, but they're about to get run over. Like, this is not happening for them tonight. If Texas is able to withstand that, do we see Ohio State revert, to some old tendencies? The rotation shortens on like the defensive line. The play calling gets a little more conservative. Like, that's another thing here, because the dynamics of how both these teams got here is fascinating to me. Like, on one hand, is Ohio State ready for a 12-round fight? Because I think that's what's going to happen here.
I think so. I think the lessons learned from the last time that they had a 12-round fight is that we can't go into a shell, because that's what caused the issues. I'm speaking purely from the offensive side. I mean, like, because I just think that, Ryan Day, for whatever reason, I mean, that's going to be something that I'm sure in the off season, whenever that takes place, it's going to be, like trying to figure out, what were you doing and why were you, so like, damn the torpedoes, we're going to run the ball up the middle kind of a mindset. Anyway, I genuinely believe that that's going to be the focus, is we're going to play aggressively. And sometimes that may, like, it may not necessarily, we may not get the same kind of results we had against Tennessee and Oregon. We're going to continue to play aggressively. And I think that's going to mean throwing the ball, and the way that the running game has opened up is because of how effective they've been with the pass, and staying with it. And I think when it comes on the defensive side, is just knowing, hey, you're going up against, a very massive offensive line against very talented quarterback. So, hey, we're going to, might need to, when it comes to the rotation of the defensive line, as you said, we might need to figure some things out as we go. But I genuinely believe that I think that the results that they learned painfully at the end of November are what's going to serve them against this really talented team in Texas.
So those are really like my three keys here would be for Ohio State would be obviously their offensive line versus Texas's front seven. I said that's going to be the biggest key to the game. I believe that. But then the other two things are almost more mental than anything, which is, are they prepared for a 12-round fight? They haven't had one in a while. Are they able to continue to channel the back against the wall, nobody believes in us mentality, or fall prey to the you are going to roll to the national title narrative that has all of a sudden popped out of nowhere the last week? So those are my Ohio State keys. But because as I mentioned earlier, it's interesting to me how both teams arrived here, because Texas's path is undoubtedly easier to this point. This is not a shot at Arizona State. Kenny Dillingham, if he isn't National Coach of the Year, is certainly top three with Kurt Signetti and, gosh, I wouldn't even know who else. Maybe Marcus Freeman after rebounding from Northern Illinois. But night and day. The caliber, like if you lined up Arizona State's players next to Ohio State's players, night and day, it's not even close. Like Ohio State, bigger, faster. Everyone talks about like the Alabama Notre Dame national championship game like 10, 11 years ago when everyone saw the two teams on the sidelines and said, oh, this is going to be bad. That's how it would look if you lined up Ohio State and Arizona State's guys. The only thing similar Texas has actually seen to that this year is Georgia. And they lost both times, including neither of them being on the road, and once to a backup quarterback. They lost to Georgia both times. And I don't think Georgia was that good this year.
Right.
So if you're Texas, have you been prepared for what you're about to see on Friday night by what you've faced the last two playoff games? Or are you like, how quick is the adjustment? You're going to have to make a quick adjustment. Like, how are they going to be able to make the quick adjustment on Friday? Like, hey, we're not playing Arizona State anymore.
Very good point. The fact that let's not ignore the fact that against Clemson, now again, Texas obviously won, but Clemson threw not as big of a scare, but they put a little bit of a, okay, like we gotta finish these guys off in game one. That was at their place. And like you said, like Arizona State, I mean, they had them down and just decided to kind of, all right, let's take our foot off the gas. And Arizona State happily obliged, like, hey, we're not going away. We're gonna try and win this game. And the next thing you know, like, wasn't as easy to put them away as they thought. So I think you raised some valid points. Is that Texas, the intangible that they've got is, I think Ohio State, they're treating this, like, to the best of my understanding, like a road game, because I know that, it's in the Cotton Bowl and it's in Dallas. It's not it's not at the University of Texas, but Ohio State, they're treating this like, okay, this is a road game that we have to go on the road to a very talented team. And we'll see if Texas has the right mindset and focus for this one.
All right. I think we've come at this thing from a few different, I think we've given fair coverage here, talking about each team, what they need to do, what they need to avoid, what they need to worry about. So Chip, your prediction and just kind of how you see this game playing out.
I see it being close until the fourth quarter, and then Ohio State pulls away. So I mean, if you want my score prediction, I can give it. But
we'll just give like a margin of victory or something. Like,
I think Ohio State win
by 2 touchdowns, by 10. Like what?
I said by 10. I'm going to say Ohio State by 10, but I want to emphasize this is okay for any Ohio State fan who's gotten spoiled. And let's call it like it is, like spoiled over the last 2 games of like sheer dominance. Okay, settle in, relax. If Ohio State doesn't land the knockout punch in the first 5 minutes, nothing is wrong. That means they're playing against a really good team. So I think this is a 4-quarter game, and Ohio State wins by 10, and in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, maybe I should have asked not whether Ohio State's ready for a 12-round fight. Is the Ohio State fan base emotionally and mentally ready for a 12-round fight? Because they haven't been in one in a while either.
That's
and they
right.
don't always handle them very well.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
So that could be a key here. Yeah, I've got Ohio State. I think they get a late touchdown and win. I think it's really close.
Yeah.
I'm taking law of averages here. They can't possibly keep doing this.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Someone has to scare them. And quite frankly, I think Texas is better equipped to do it than either of the two teams they would potentially face in the championship game. And I think Vegas agrees. Because I was looking at something, I was curious. I was like, well, if Ohio State beats Texas, what does that say for the title game? And they're up to 8.5, 9.5 point favorites on both Notre Dame and Penn State, respectively, in a hypothetical matchup. And those lines were even 2 days ago were 6 and 7. So they're going up and up and up and up. They perform well against Texas and win. They may be 10 plus point favorites in the title. I mean, it may get up to that level. I think Texas is the best combination of quarterback, offensive weapons, and defensive front that's left in the playoffs that Ohio State would face. I think Notre Dame and Penn State have ingredients, but I don't think they have all the ingredients that would allow them to beat Ohio State on a good day for Ohio State. I think Texas does have the ingredients to be very competitive. And I think they'll get off to a better start. Obviously, can't get off to a worse start than Tennessee and Oregon did. I think they'll get off to a good start. Texas will. And I think we're going to have a game in the fourth quarter, like you said. But I think Ohio State's going to score a touchdown somewhere in the last 8 to 10 minutes of that game and win by a touchdown. That's my prediction. I think this is going to be an awesome game. I think we're going to get more fireworks in this one than we're going to get in Notre Dame Penn State. My score prediction obviously will come out on BuckeyeHuddle.com. See the game's Friday night, so we'll have the predictions up Thursday evening. But Buckeyes by a touchdown. Let's say somewhere I think someone's getting to 30.
Yeah, I do too.
So I said first to 20 in Notre Dame Penn State. I'll say first to 30 in Ohio State, Texas. And I think both are probably going to get to 20. I'd be surprised, even with recent performances. I'd be surprised if Texas didn't get to 20. I just think they have too much talent on offense, but they also have a defense that I think can either cause a turnover or two, or at least get them some favorable field position situations. Whereas Ohio State's offense has just run roughshod over the last two opponents and there's been no flipping of the field. It's just been the drives have ended when Ohio State crosses the goal line has been the last two games.
Right.
So we'll see. Love these two matchups. 4 of the biggest brands in college football. I'll say it again. If you're not enjoying the 12-team playoff, you are a soulless ghoul. Go find another hobby, because this has been awesome. I don't care. All the games have been competitive. Don't care. Got news for you. Not all the wild card games this weekend in the NFL are going to be competitive. Someone's going to get blown out. Maybe multiple someones are going to get blown out. So that's the nature of one game and out playoff situations. So I love the playoff. We're getting all these great games. We get to talk about this. As I lose my mic there briefly, it's January 7th, and we're still talking about these games.
That's right.
That was all the way to January 20th. My gosh. I feel like 3 extra weeks of college football. What is wrong with you people that don't like this?
You got it.
So, all right, guys, we will wrap it up. We'll be back to recap the playoff semifinals. Any relevant transfer portal news, whatever it might be, we'll get to you guys here after the conclusion. I'll probably do it Monday.
Yeah.
Games will wrap up Friday night. So enjoy your weekends, enjoy your semifinal watching, and we will see you Monday.
Take care.